Good afternoon. My name is Akiko Ito. I am the Chief of the Secretariat for the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities at the United Nations of the Department of Economic and Social Affairs. May I first of all thank our chairs and colleagues from the International Disability Rights Interest Group and the Women in International Law Interest Group for organizing this very first and most important panel on violence against women with disabilities. I would also like to express my deep gratitude to Ms. Stephanie Otoleva of Women Enabled and Professor Hope Lewis for their leadership and for organizing this important panel. I'm very honored to participate in this meeting, even if I cannot be there in person. I'm sorry that I'm not able to speak to you to be interactive due to unforeseen official duties at this time, but I'm a long member of the ASIL and have been privileged to collaborate with its current president and other ASIL members. We had a successful panel discussions, expert consultations, and publishing articles in the field of disability and women's rights. For example, in my alma mater, UC Berkeley, Bolt Hall of Law, we partnered with the United Nations to organize the first expert group meeting on international norms and standards relating to disability in 1998. And this paved the way for the treaty process that resulted in the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. I'm now taking this opportunity to invite my fellow members of the ASIL and their institutions to join us in the work of the UN to promote the rights of women with disabilities in all the global agenda. Our starting point itself is a commitment of the United Nations to advance the rights of women and rights of persons with disabilities, which is deeply rooted in our charter. The charter calls for progress in economic and social development and promotion of human rights for a peaceful and prosperous world. Over the past decades, we have seen great advances through global movements of women and persons with disabilities. Perhaps I don't need to mention to this audience the history of CEDAW, Mexico, Copenhagen, Nairobi, and Beijing global conferences on women. I believe that we all share this history of the global women's movement as an integral part of our movement and toward gender equality and women's empowerment. As you may already know, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities was adopted in 2006, and it has laid down a comprehensive global normative framework for the protection and promotion of the rights of persons with disabilities, including women with disabilities. The process for this convention was indeed about interpreting the universal human rights enshrined in the Human Rights Conventions and other international instruments from the disability perspective. It was an extraordinary opportunity for learning from all stakeholders, and it is recorded as one of the most successful treaty conclusions in the history of the United Nations. The convention now has 111 states parties to the convention, 63 of which also ratify the optional protocol to the convention. The global rights movement has this important weapon to bring to the fore national regional efforts toward equality and empowerment of persons with disabilities, including women with disabilities. The convention in its Article 6, Women with Disabilities, stipulates 1. States parties recognize that women and girls with disabilities are subject to multiple discrimination and in this regard shall take measures to ensure the full and equal enjoyment by them of all human rights and fundamental freedoms. 2. States parties shall take all appropriate measures to ensure the full development, advancement, and empowerment of women for the purposes of guaranteeing them the exercise and enjoyment of the human rights and fundamental freedoms set out in the present convention. While this is an extraordinary achievement to be able to learn from the experience in jurisprudential development and implementation of CEDAW and initial stage of implementing the CRPD, which mutually reinforce each other, the situation of women with disabilities has yet to be integrated into such mutual enforcement. Still to this day, women with disabilities are often excluded from their communities due to multiple discriminations and lack of access to political, economic, and social structures of countries and the decision-making processes. In this regard, the UN Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples, adopted by General Assembly of the UN in 2007, also specifically addresses the rights of indigenous peoples, including women and girls with disabilities, which perhaps need to be taken into account. The theme of our panel today, violence against women with disabilities, is of critical importance in promotion and protection of human rights. Women with disabilities experience disproportionately high rates of violence. In 2006 in-depth study on all forms of violence against women of the Secretary General, it was observed that surveys conducted in Europe, North America, and Australia have shown that over half of women with disabilities have experienced physical abuse compared to 1/3 of non-disabled women. Well, today, rather than discussing the nature, extent, issues, and trends of the violence experienced and the barriers to ending it, and finding justice, these issues may be better able to be spoken about by my fellow panelists today. The question I'd like to address today is about the role of the UN in promoting the human rights of women with disabilities and thereby creating necessary environment for combating violence against them. In accordance with the resolution adopted by the UN General Assembly, we prioritize the mainstreaming of disability in the UN agenda, and we do so within a multidimensional efforts and striving to include the perspective of women with disabilities in any issue that we may take up. In our work, an emphasis is placed on the cross-sectionalities of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and other human rights treaties, including the CEDAW. We recognize that to advance the rights of women and girls with disabilities in society and development, it is very essential that their perspectives be included in all aspects of work for women's and girls' empowerment, and that all work on disability incorporate a gender perspective. This should take place in all the UN agenda, including development and peace and security. One of the first publications of DESA, UNFPA, UN Fund on Population, and the Wellesley Center for Women, is a resource manual, Disability Rights, Gender Development, a resource tool for action. This publication was developed to promote precisely this approach. This is available on our website, and copies are also available on request. For theoretical, jurisprudential, and policy development, the cross-sectionalities among the CRPD, the Convention on Disability, CEDAW, and CRC, as well as MDGs and other international commitments, provide many entry points for building an intricate web of normative and policy structures, mechanisms, processes, and supporting networks. Governments and civil society organizations and development agencies should also focus on the rights of women with disabilities and their inclusion in society and development, peace and security as well. Taking this approach, we have addressed non-traditional issues and co-organized a series of UN panels on the role of information and communication technologies in empowering women with disabilities, the inclusion of women with disabilities in post-conflict reconstruction and peace-building efforts in pursuit of equality for women and girls with disabilities. Most recently this year, in February, at the 56th session of the Commission on the Status of Women, DESA, our department, co-sponsored an event focused on economic empowerment and political participation of rural women and girls with disabilities, which was organized by Women Enabled, led by Ms. Stephanie Otoleva, and other civil society organizations. The panel was participated by women with disabilities from Bhutan who spoke up for themselves, their rights, their vision for future. It was truly outstanding. At this time in our history, as we have now discussed, there are a number of critical opportunities to advance the inclusion of the rights of women with disabilities in the UN Global Agenda, including this important issue of violence against women. As you know, the UN Entity for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women, UN Women, has been created to accelerate the goals of the UN on gender equality and the empowerment of women. As you know, the UN Division for Advancement of Women is now part of the UN Women, but they used to be part of our department. Now that they left, we are in the middle of exploring how we can do our mainstreaming of gender equality and empowerment of women in all aspects of the work we do in economic and social development. The issue of violence against women is among UN Women's priorities, and UN Women provides program and technical assistance as well as policy and normative support focused on this end. It also operates a trust fund to end violence against women. In November 2011, Mrs. Bachelet, the head of the UN Women, outlined a comprehensive policy agenda to end violence against women globally. UN Women also joined the Secretary General's Unite to End Violence Against Women campaign, a multi-year effort launched in 2008 to prevent and eliminate violence against women and girls in all parts of the world. As a focal point for women of my department, I participated in the interagency meeting on gender equality and empowerment of women. When I discussed this issue at the meeting, Ms. Bachelet mentioned that the violence against women with disabilities should be a major priority in this crucial global endeavor against violence. Next year, the 57th session of the Commission on the Status of Women will focus on the elimination of all forms of violence against women and girls. It will be critical to ensure that the situation of women and girls with disabilities is included in the session's agenda and outcome document. In recent years, because of the strong advocacy of organization of women with disabilities, there have been successes in including references to women with disabilities in outcome documents. But clear policy commitments are needed very urgently in all the UN negotiated documents on this issue. As UN Women proceeds in early years, we have to work together to make sure that disability is included and mainstreamed in its work, including the issue of violence against women. We now see some efforts underway in including disability. To pick a few examples, in Uruguay, UN Women has assisted the formation of first network of women with disabilities to help improve their standing in the workplace. And they also support the participation of women with disabilities in relevant events that UN Women organizes, such as the upcoming Disability and HIV Leadership Forum. And this will take place in Washington, D.C. This July before the start of the International AIDS Conference. As DESA, as a department, we intend to work closely with the UN Women to support its ongoing efforts. Before closing, I would like to note that as a deadline for the Millennium Development Goals approaches, as we all know, the international community has begun initial efforts to prepare a post-2015 development agenda and development framework. This preparatory process provides an opportunity to include disability and gender perspectives at the same time. The General Assembly decided also to convene a high-level meeting on disability and development next year in 2013 in September. This meeting could also present a significant opportunity that we can include a gender dimension and also disability at the same time to ensure that the voices and concerns of women and girls with disabilities, such as in the issue of violence against women, is fully taken into account. Once again, I would like to propose to you that you as ASIL members and your institutions partner with us to galvanize all our efforts to include, integrate, and mainstream the voices of women with disabilities in all the UN global agenda. And thank you very much. Thank you.